Let's begin. 2023, the Angels. At the deadline, the Angels were 56-52, 3 games back of a wild card spot. But most importantly, they were trying to show Ohtani that they can acquire talent and make the playoffs. They traded for CJ Cron and Randall Grichuk from the Rockies and gave up Jake Madden and Mason Albright. They traded for Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez from the White Sox and gave up Edgar Quiro and Kai Bush. And lastly, Dominic Leone came over from the Mets and they gave up Jeremiah Jackson. And by the end of August, just 1 month later, the Angels were 6 games below 500 and placed all of those players on waivers. So those prospects, Madden and Albright, Quiro and Bush, Jeremiah Jackson, they were gone for nothing. Let's go to 2022 next. And it'll be the White Sox that get the honor having the worst trade deadline. Now, this was Dylan Cease's best year, and they were getting good stuff from the rest of that rotation, and the bullpen behind Liam Hendricks was very solid. At the deadline, they were 51-51. In the middle of it, they traded for Jake Diekman and only Jake Diekman. They needed pop. They needed a second baseman and missed on Whit Merrifield and Brandon Drury, who both went for cheap. In the end, the White Sox finished 81-81, stayed right there at 500, but were only 5 games back of a wild card spot. Let's go to 2021 next. This year we had the massive Cubs sell-off, dealing Baez to the Mets, Bryant to the Giants, and Rizzo to the Yankees. But the loser in 2021 were the Colorado Rockies. This was the year they held on to pieces they should have traded. Trevor Story, John Gray, CJ Cron. Yeah, back when CJ Cron was good. At the time, Rockies were 13 games below 500 with no hope in sight. No logical reason to hold on to players who were going to leave at the end of the season. Story after the deadline was even quoted saying he didn't know why he was still there. And as far as John Gray was concerned, the reason at the time they held on to him was because they felt that they could get a draft pick if he declined a qualifying offer. Well, they didn't even offer him the QO. Since then, it has only gotten worse for the Rockies, losing 100 games in 2023 and on track to do so in 2024. Maybe some of this could have been avoided if they picked up some prospects back in 2021. Let's go to 2020 next. Now, at this point, we're able to start grading the trades by how the prospects have panned out. So this might be tough, but I'm going to say the Padres. They traded Edward Olivares away for Trevor Rosenthal. They traded Hudson Potts and Jessian Rosario for Mitch Moreland. Gerardo Reyes went to the Angels for Jason Castro. Taylor Trammell, Luis Torrens, Andres Munoz, and Ty France went to Seattle for Austin Nola, Austin Adams, and Dan Altavella. Matt Brash went to Seattle in a separate trade for Taylor Williams. Austin Hedges, Josh Naylor, Cal Quantrill, Gabriel Arias, Joey Cantillo, and Owen Miller went to Cleveland for Mike Clevenger, Greg Allen, and Matt Waldron. They ended up finishing 37-23, second best in the National League, but were swept in the NLDS by the LA Dodgers. Think about all of that talent that went away to go and get swept by the Dodgers. Players like Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Ty France, Josh Naylor, Cal Quantrill to get swept by the Dodgers. And who's still on the Padres today from all of that dealing? It's Matt Waldron. Let's go to 2019 next. This was the year the Guardians traded Trevor Bauer to the Reds. The Astros traded for Zach Greinke. We had the 1-for-1 Zach Gallen for Jazz Chisholm trade, and the Blue Jays dealt Marcus Stroman and Sanchez away. But the award for the worst deadline, though, goes to the Diamondbacks. We'll get to the Greinke trade, but they also traded Jose Caballero to Seattle for Mike Leake, whose career was over after the 2019 season. Seattle would later use Caballero in 2024 to add some pop to their lineup in the form of Luke Raley. But the Greinke haul is what takes the cake. They brought back Seth Beer, Corbin Martin, JB Bukauskas, Josh Rojas for Zach Greinke, who was having another all-star season. Beer can't hit major league pitching. Corbin Martin is getting rocked by AAA pitching. JB Bukauskas was waived, and Josh Rojas was traded to Seattle as a part of another trade that doesn't look particularly good for the Diamondbacks. Let's go to 2018 next. This was the year the O's traded Manny Machado to the Dodgers for a bunch of players, including Dean Kramer. And while you may want to go Orioles here, there was a bigger L of a trade, and it involved the Pirates and the Rays. The Pirates received Chris Archer and sent Tyler Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and Shane Baz to the Rays. Meadows would become an all-star in 2019 and hit 33 home runs, and in 2021 hit another 27 homers, and later be traded for Isaac Paredes, another Rays trade win. Baz would become one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball, although injuries have delayed his arrival on the big stage, and Tyler Glasnow will go on to establish himself as one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. Although injuries plagued his time in Tampa, the Rays still win this trade by a landslide because Chris Archer would only start 33 games with Pittsburgh and go 6-12 before being bought out of his contract in 2021. Let's go to 2017 next. We're going to go with the Orioles because this impacted 2017 and 2018 because in 2018, as we mentioned, Manny Machado didn't bring a significant haul in return. They also chose 2018 to deal Britton and Scope, and the returns there were underwhelming, and realistically they should have traded them all in 2017, and in doing so would have brought back significant returns. Since 2012 the Orioles had been winners, and this was the first year they went back to being losers, and it hadn't sunk in yet. 2016 is next. This is the year the Yankees went crazy trading for prospects, sending Chapman to Chicago and Miller to Cleveland, the two teams that would go head-to-head in the World Series a few months later, where we would see the Cubs finally win the World Series. But this year's trade loser are the Dodgers. And it's probably a little unfair here. They swung a trade for then Astros reliever Josh Fields and sent Yordan Alvarez back in return. To be fair to the Dodgers, Alvarez hadn't even played a pro game yet, having been signed for $2 million out of Cuba a month before. But in the end, this is one of those all-time trade trivia questions that leaves you shocked the first time you hear about it. Let's go to 2015 next. This is the trade deadline that wound up costing Alex Anthopoulos his job with the Blue Jays, as new president Mark Shapiro would show up in 2017 and lambast Alex's use of the farm system at this particular deadline. We've seen how that played out. In the long run, the Blue Jays fans have taken the biggest L from this trade deadline, but that's not the exercise here. Which team took the biggest L? That goes to the Philadelphia Phillies, who had become bottom feeders and traded then ace Cole Hamels to the Texas Rangers for a bunch of prospects. The full deal was Hamels and Diekman for Jorge Alfaro, Alec Asher, Jared Eichhoff, Matt Harrison, Jake Thompson, and Nick Williams. Alfaro never got it going with the Phillies and was thrown into a package for Realmuto 2 years later. Nick Williams looked like he was going to be something, but that fell apart in 2019, and he was also thrown in the Realmuto deal. And let's be clear, Sixto Sanchez was the centerpiece of that trade. Without him, Realmuto doesn't go to Philly. Alfaro and Williams were throw-ins. Harrison never pitched for the Phillies, but cost them $40 million. Asher posted a 5.88 ERA over 12 games before being sent to the Orioles for cash. Eichhoff started 76 games for the Phillies, but was generally underwhelming. And Jake Thompson pitched to a 4.87 ERA over 30 games. So, just like the D-backs and Greinke in 2019, the Phillies traded the best starter available at the deadline for a load of junk. It wouldn't be until 2022 where the Phillies would win more than 82 games. And failing on a trade like this is one reason why the turnaround didn't happen sooner. 2014 is next. This is the year the Red Sox traded away John Lester, John Lackey, Jake Peavy, and others 1 year after winning the World Series. But the loser of this deadline is actually a team that made the playoffs. That's the Oakland A's. But this was when the wild card was a one-game thing, and Oakland lost that game. They dealt for Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill from the Cubs for Billy McKinney, Addison Russell, and Dan Straley. Now, none of those prospects became big stars, but who's to say that couldn't have happened in Oakland? They also traded slugger Yoenis Cespedes to the Red Sox for Lester and Gomes. Gomes gave them nothing after being acquired. So while the pitching was upgraded, and they did have to fight for that wild card spot, they were one and done and wouldn't return to the postseason for 4 more years. Those are the worst trade deadlines of the last 10 years. If you think I missed anybody, comment down below with your submission for worst trade deadline of the last 10 years. Stay close to the channel, everybody. Lots of trade deadline coverage as we are gearing up for the 2024 trade deadline. Would love for you to be along for the ride for that one. Stay close. Make sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. And that's going to do it for this one. BALLCAP Nation, I salute you. Thank you guys for coming in. As always, if it's low, let it go. And if it's high, let it fly. I'll catch you next time.